Emmanuel Macron rose to the French presidency a year ago and promised to set the economy marching towards prosperity.
Ladies and gentlemen, my first message is that France is back. France is back at the core of Europe.
Since then, his meetings with world leaders have seemingly reasserted French influence internationally, and he's emerged as a key supporter of the global initiative to combat climate change. But his reform agenda at home is being met with intense resistance. Railway workers have been on strike for 2 months over the government's plan to let private operators compete with the state-run company. Fewer Air France flights are taking to the skies as the government refuses to raise wages at the national carrier, and thousands more are taking to the streets over labor law changes that give small companies more freedom to hire and fire workers.
For now, Macron's reforms have not had the impact that we hope to see by the end of his term. But the image of France has already changed a lot globally. France is being perceived more positively by investors.
So far, Macron has pressed on with his reforms despite the pushback. But the rising number of protesters in the streets shows patience is wearing thin. Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
So let's go to Paris now, and joining us from there is Peter Humi. Peter, hello there. Now, look, many airlines have disappeared over the years. Economy Minister Bruno Le Maire over there says Air France could too. Is he being a little over the top, or could this really happen?
Well, as far as he's concerned, it could certainly pose a potential threat that Air France might ultimately disappear. I don't think it's a realistic prospect at this point. I think he's trying to underline the fact that Air France is in a bit of a pickle, shall we say, at the moment. What they're trying to do is sort out a claim by a minority union, but nevertheless a minority union that has sufficient impact and clout to be able to affect up to 30 or 40% of all the flights that Air France, especially in the short haul and medium haul service that it has. It's a matter, I think, of the French unions coming to terms with reality. And Macron, in his election campaign 12, 13, 14 months ago, one of his points was that France has to be competitive, that it has to behave like its neighbors, that it has to instill the kind of reforms that we've seen in countries like as Britain and Germany in terms of their airlines. British Airways and Lufthansa underwent some fairly drastic reforms that involved cost-cutting and some fairly realistic attitudes in terms of low-cost competition.
Yeah.
So I think the government is looking to pursue this kind of policy, and Air France has to adapt.
Right. Peter, what's the mood amongst French people with regards to Air France? If Air France went away tomorrow, would there be a lot of hand-wringing over it, or would they simply switch over to EasyJet and Ryanair?
No, I mean, having lived in France for so many years, I think there would certainly be a lot of hand-wringing. Air France is a flag carrier. It represents France and all that France symbolizes, of course. And it's one of the major airlines. Let's not forget, Air France does provide, when it's not on strike, a particularly good service, I must say. Having flown Air France over the past 30 years, that I've been here, I must say it is certainly one of the most competitive in terms of service and in terms of destinations. Nevertheless, it does have to come to terms with some of the low-cost competition, and the fact that the European Union is ultimately going to be the arbiter and the decider, not only in terms of airlines, in terms of competition, but also in the SNCF, the French railway service that is also undergoing a series of strikes against exactly this kind of reform that opens up Air France and travel and trains to competition.
Right. Let's talk about Jean-Marc Janaillac, the CEO of Air France, who's now resigned. Macron's trying to be tough on the unions, but they don't seem to be buckling, do they? And his departure kind of exemplifies that.
No, that's right. I think he, for whatever reasons, he staked his his reputation, certainly his job, and the fact that he could make a deal with the unions. I mean, this is what we're seeing today is the 14th day of a strike by Air France staff and air crew. Let me emphasize once again, this is not the entire Air France crew that's on strike, but a union that represents approximately 35% of pilots and air crew. So this is something that I think you could find some criticism in terms of the management. I certainly have some fairly good connections with Air France and senior management, and they were saying that the management is not really been up to the challenge that the unions are throwing the gauntlet down.
Okay. Right.
What happens afterwards? I mean, how long can the strike last? If Air France doesn't buckle, if the government doesn't buckle, at a certain point, the strike has to.
It does indeed. Peter Humi, thank you very much.